I'm going to play a short intro. It's 1 minute 19 seconds. All right, we got 1, 2, 3, 4. Just waiting on 5. And there's the last one. Okay. So welcome everybody on the live and the replay. We've got a very special show. I can feel it. I usually, every now and then I get a bolt of energy before a show, particularly if it's someone I don't know. And I think that's what I was feeling a while ago. I was telling Morgan, I feel like I'm going to get sick. What's going on? But anyway, I've had a lot of friends tell me about Gary Cook. I haven't had time to really investigate much in terms of his page, but I just went outside and was talking to Morgan, and she said, he's been married for 50 some odd years. I'm like, wow. And I already knew from talking to people that you're very immersed in what's going on and have been for quite some time. So I'm really anxious to talk to you. We have been getting suppressed. Everybody knows that. If you could just share this to one page or one group, that'd be great, because it's taken people 20, 30 minutes to figure out we're on a show over the last few weeks. But I'm going to be right back. Somebody said, Jane Bura said, my favorite person. Great to see Gary Cook, an amazing soul. We're going to play our intro, allow people time to come in, and we'll be right back with Gary and get to know him. And just give us 1 minute 19. How's it going, everybody? We got the beautiful, beloved brother, Gary Cook, in the house. I don't know him on a human level, but I think on an energetic level, we do know each other. I was telling him that before the show, I started feeling a little bit, I felt energy coming in, and a lot of times that'll happen when I'm about to connect with somebody. And I said to him, as soon as he came on the screen, I was like, God, this is weird, but I feel like I'm looking at myself. He said, well, it's not too often you get two handsome guys like us on the screen at the same time. So I appreciate the wisdom and the humor and the wisdom. Welcome to the show, and thank you for sharing space with us today and honoring us with your presence. Thank you for your service to humanity. I can just pick up on the energy of it all. And from the many friends that have reached out to me and said, wow, you need to talk to this gentleman, and all those that have reached out since they knew that you were coming on. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. What an incredible welcome, actually. It's great. And I see a few people who are online and a few comments coming up. So, and I'm seeing a few familiar names there. So these connections are just amazing, aren't they? How you and I connecting on this human level for the first time, and yet we have been so connected for so long.
Yeah.
All around the world with so many people. This is incredible.
Isn't it?
Heavens above. I just thank you. You just honor me greatly by inviting me to appear with you today, and so we can chat, or giving me a platform to talk, because sometimes once I start, I'm hard to stop.
That's okay.
I don't know if we have a time limitation.
We don't have a time limitation. We don't have another show for 4 hours, and we typically go about an hour, but we've had shows go to 2 hours. I just go with the flow, and
look, Todd, that's good. You just cue me on.
Well, we're both talkers. I have a feeling we're from the same branch of the tree of life. We might be from the same leaf on the branch of the tree of life.
Well, that,
There's so many places to start with you. We have had people come on the show. We're at a 2,400, a little over 2,400 shows. This particular show on the network, and we've had a few people. I want to say probably 20 that had their wake up experience in pre 1990, like some even going back to the 60s. I have a feeling that you've been plugged in for a long time and you've been waiting for all of us to catch up.
Todd, that's interesting you say that, actually. I guess that when I first really stuck the plug into things happened about 1973, which is in the last century, by the way. And I had what is commonly known today, which I wasn't aware of at the time. I had a near-death experience. I suddenly discovered that I was quite allergic to the sting of a bee,
Yeah.
the beautiful bees, which I love. We all love. And so away I went, and by the time people rushed me many, many miles into the doctor, I had gone, and I was on a journey, which is incredible, and I was going down. And so that's another story for another time that we could perhaps talk about in more in depth. But when I came to and I came back into the world, it was such a shock, and I was very physically ill for quite a few weeks, and my wife had to nurse me back. And during this time, of course, all this particular event which happened to me, not knowing what it was, not even what it was called, this opened a doorway.
Yeah.
And I guess it's something which had been latent within us, or it is latent within us all, latent within me. And this, of course, gave me an insight into what just may happen when we slip the mortal coil and our spirit moves. Wow. So that's very reassuring. And that being my linchpin, I've got no fear of what's going to happen. But it opened me up to all sorts of other things. We pursued spiritual paths and things, and we were initiated into an incredible path, which we follow to this day after 47 years,
Wow.
and which is just a meditative path, and also a path on which you just stick to a certain diet. Very simple, very easy. Challenges are always there, as you know, to find the time to sit to quietly and do your meditation. So there, it was all set. But I guess, Todd, it's amazing because everything happened over a long period of time, over about 30 years. It wasn't just one great big explosion of this is it. Wow, look at the universe. I know what it's all about. Nothing like that. And it's been a gentle exploration. And I guess being quite patient with the way things move. Sometimes we get, sort of in the fervor of the moment. Oh gosh, I want to know this. I want to be there. I want to move in my meditation. I want to get deeper. I want to get out there. No, it comes. It happens. So that was the starting point.
Yeah.
Plus the fact that when I was 16 years old, I had an incredible accident which was self-inflicted. I had blown myself up, and I was playing around with things as 16-year-olds do. And that was a very traumatic experience. And I'm a great believer that often the shifts in a person's perception in life come through the drama and the trauma. And the trauma can be in any guise. And suddenly it just whoosh, and something inside clicks on, or may even click off, but most people clicks on. Wow, there's more to this than meets the eye. So that's just a little synopsis of how I sort of started on this incredible little pathway, which is now turned into a main highway in my
Yeah,
life.
I call it the soul highway. And
Yeah,
it is getting bigger and bigger now,
I think
Uh
so.
see, there's so much. I feel like every show I do is a session and I'm the client, and it's full of activations and channelings and downloads and dimensional experiences and images flashing in my head, just like looking at you, and I feel like I'm looking in a mirror. But there's so much there's such a wealth of information, data, and code in the stories, not the stories that handicap us, but the transformational aspect of the story. And there's so many different versions of it. I'm curious in regard to your journey. Now, for one thing, I know you've been married over 50 years, and that's a powerful thing to be with somebody, to be going through all of this stuff that you were talking about took 30 plus years. Uh, One of the other things, people come on here and they talk about how they were reawoken. There's many times different faces of the universe that present themselves as the escort, if you will, to the indoctrination and initiations. Could be dragon energy, could be galactic, could be angelic or other divine essences, elementals. Has there been any faces of the universe that have uh, escorted you, or have you been communicating with a singular voice in terms of the universal?
In a sense, the communication, Todd, has come mostly of my work within nature.
Mm.
Now, for a number of years, for about 30 years, I was an amateur archaeologist and historian. And I travelled all over New Zealand seeking answers to the earlier history of Aotearoa New Zealand. And I was doing the hard, what you call the hard yard, which is doing the measurements and doing this and making notes and writing papers and articles. I thought, this is wonderful. But I didn't realise for some time what was happening, because there were some places, and you've experienced this yourself, and so have a lot of the people viewing, where you walk into a place, somewhere you haven't been before, forest, a beach, sand dunes, mountains, stones, and suddenly you stop and, oh, what's here?
Yeah.
Something has just happened to me, like you've gone through a little doorway, into another sort of realm. Ooh. So what used to happen when I was going to some of these, and I went to a lot of very ancient sites in New Zealand, which are very sacred and tapu to Māori of today, and some sites which even Māori of today have lost track of. And I would do what was required for my research. And then I found two or three places that I wanted to go back to repeatedly. I'd done the work, but I'd drive for miles and climb the mountain and go and sit in this place and think, whoa, what is here?
Yeah.
And so in doing this, Todd, what happened? I was slowly opening myself to links within nature, within the nature personified by forest, water, stone, um, and mountains and grasses and animals and birds. I became sort of hypersensitively to these things and aware of them. That, wow. And then, of course, the most amazing thing which occurred a number of years ago, my wife Raven and myself, this is so, I don't know, we just turned 50 or 55 or something, no, almost 60. And we joined a group of people to cross the Southern Alps, which is a very high, precipitous mountain range in the South Island of New Zealand. And we were on what is called a hikoi, which is like a sacred journey. And we were carrying Pouanamu, the sacred stone, the green stone of New Zealand, across the ancient trails. And this was a very spiritual journey that we've been invited to go on. And it was on this journey that my wife Ray and myself had some time where we were very much on our own, and we were long away, miles away from other people, and we were sitting on the edge of this amazing riverbank, towering mountains, snow-capped peaks there. And then we both sitting in a meditative situation. We both at the same time heard voices singing. We heard this incredible melody. We couldn't make out words, but it was just voices singing in harmony. I opened my eyes and turned to look at Raven. She opened her eyes and turned to look at me. We both heard it at the same time, and we commented on it. Of course, when we sort of surfaced like that, it went. So that once again opened something up. And also I used to find after that experience, when I was going back to these special places again, I'd sometimes just sit quietly there. And as I was sitting there, I became aware there was something over my shoulder behind me, which was also standing there, observing, looking. And of course, initially, you do the very human thing. You sort of stand up slowly and be very nonchalant and quickly turn around to see what's behind you. And you look at the forest and there's nothing there. Oh, wow. But this was something which pervaded for a long, long time. And then I came to realize that I was, someone said it's a bit hard to hear me. Can I turn, can I turn volume up at all? Or
Yeah, it depends on your mic. I'm not sure if your mic has a volume control, but as you sit up closer, you can hear you better.
Okay, I'm closer.
There you go. Yeah,
I hope that's better.
Yeah, much better.
Sorry about that. I didn't have time to line all this up properly. This is
all you're good. You're good.
Okay, good.
No, this is fascinating. Continue.
Okay, and so then I found that there was more going on here than met my eye, and so then I started to collect stories from people because my work I was doing around forests in the northern part of New Zealand put me in touch with lots of hunters and farmers and people like that. And I put it out to them there. I said, do you have any experiences when you're in the forest or on the back of your farm where you become aware of other beings or things which you can't see or even things you do see? And then lo and behold, I started to collect anecdotes.
Wow.
And they came in thick and fast. And to that end, I thought there's so much going on here. And I became aware of what we call the Patapai Arehi, which is a Māori name for the little forest dwellers, the fairy elven people of the forest in New Zealand, whose description, by the way, is of being very small in stature, very pale in skin, very light in color and hair color, and always very elusive, but often heard in the forest but never seen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, wow. And that is, of course, is when I got together with a friend of mine, and we directed and produced a 1-hour documentary on Voices from the Forest, we called it, and put that out to the world. And that was amazing, incredible journey.
Is that my friend Martin McNichol says, watch Gary's documentary on Gaia TV. It is amazing. Is that what he's referring to? Or is that something?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Hello, Martin.
Martin is incredible. You brought something to mind. I watched a show last night, and I want to get your perspective on this. I think you can help us, all of us. I love what you said about, being in that space, sitting there with your wife, you're hearing the singing or you're feeling something behind you. And then the minute you, I guess, become conscious at a human level, or almost like you break the connection, right?
Yeah.
Now, last night I was watching this show. It was pretty interesting. It's called The Phenomenon. It's on Prime TV, Prime Video. And it's about ET contact and UFO history and the cover-ups and stuff. It was actually done pretty good. But there was one scene that popped in my head when you were telling that story. And it was about a school in Zimbabwe, a very, very credible ET encounter that happened during the day at a school in Zimbabwe 20 years ago. And the ship landed. The kids ran over to the ship, and some of them were only a meter away. And a small being came out dressed in a black, kind of a black bodysuit, big eyes, and a small, childlike in stature being. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because I'm trying to figure out how we can stay in that space where we can hear, see, touch, and feel those things from the higher sensitivities. What the kids were describing was that they looked at the being eye to eye, and that the being started to telepathically communicate to them. And they described their feelings, and they described the message, which was uniform. Don't get too caught up in technology and start taking care of the earth and all this stuff. But what struck me was one of the girls said, as soon as I broke contact, all of the telepathy stopped. And so as you're telling this story about being out there and hearing the voices, have you figured out a way? Is there a way because you're right. We've all experienced those moments, and then your rational mind comes in and goes, oh, wait a minute, am I imagining things? Is there a way to consciously stay connected when those things occur, to your mind?
I think there is. And also, this is also very important to something I hopefully will talk about later, and that is making direct connections with elemental beings, the fairy realms, and all the things and trees that grow in the forest. And I find for myself that um, I honor the unseen. Whenever I go for a walk on the wild side or even in the garden, I'll stop for a moment and I'll close my eyes and I'll just give recognition to the people which are there, the unseen beings, and I will thank them for being there. And of course, in those unseen realms, they're there for all sorts of reasons. We have spirits of the ancestors there. We have guardians who have stayed in place to look after a certain area. We, of course, have the elementals and the fairy realms. That's another complete realm. Then, of course, we have the energetic beings around us, such as animals and birds, insects, unseen. And then, of course, we've got the grass we may be standing on, and we've got the trees and the forest and the plants. Gosh, all living, all conscious beings in their own right too. And so I find that just by just saying a few words and acknowledging them, standing still, and then either proceeding on my walk or sitting quietly, or even laying on the grass. And then this allows me to sort of open myself more, I suppose, and then I am more open to what's going on. It's a little, Todd, like it's a peripheral vision thing.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so often this happens to all of us.
Yes.
And it's the old story that if you whip your head around to have a look, it seems to have gone.
Yeah.
And it's a little like if you hear something, and this is what really lifts you, when you hear a response, you hear something coming back to you, and you've just got to be quiet, be still, just listen patiently. So there are ways of making connections, and also I feel that to meditate or sit quietly in these places, in the right sort of mind and heart space, this opens yourself up. Because I have such a strong feeling that in the unseen world, and also in the seen world, which is every rock and every tree and every plant, they're so aware of you. And when you repeatedly go into a place for your favorite walk, they know you. They know who you are. And yet we so often do not acknowledge the fact that they already recognize us. So we should just acknowledge the unseen world every time we walk, even sitting at home in the comfort of your lounge, your favorite potted plant. You chat to it and talk to it, and it knows you and it appreciates that. So this is one way I feel of just opening a dialogue, and the dialogue will then not necessarily be in the spoken word. It's something which will come in here. You'll just be aware. And what I often say is too that when doing an introduction, you do it with your eyes closed, and you just do it softly and gently. And you don't go into these situations sort of saying, well, listen, I'm having trouble with the mortgage. I need some money, please. Okay, no. You leave all the baggage somewhere at the gateway. You walk in with an open heart and open mind. And once you get into the habit of doing this, no matter where you might be in the world, things start to open for you. This is what I have found.
Yeah.
And okay, I guess to reading and joining little interest groups. There's so much around nowadays, as you know, Todd, to reinforce what we're experiencing and perhaps give an answer or partial answer and allow us to carry on. But what I always say, when people like myself come and share my experiences, and this is what we are, I look upon myself as a facilitator. I just have the stuff I find and I put it out there continuously all the time, writing articles, writing books, putting it out on Facebook and what have you. And this is just to inspire. But I also say to people, you just cannot be the couch potato and just sit back and go,
Yeah.
oh, that's pretty good. You've got to get out there
Yeah.
and do a little of the stuff yourself.
This is really interesting because I can resonate. I resonate with this. So yeah, in my reawakening, which started 9 years ago, there the vast majority of it was was achieved or experienced in nature walks. I lived next door to a cemetery that had a bayou running through it, and there was a lot of activity that you're describing, both what you can see and what you can't. And and I often and so let me fast forward a little bit. We now live in Arkansas, and at
Right.
the back of the house, there's a dry riverbed that basically looks like a forest in the middle of this town. Like
Right.
you literally can't see anything. Since
Yeah.
we've gotten here, I felt the elemental beings very, very strong, and it's not the first time, but there was something different about it. So I walk out there, and I would get this impression that they're trying to say, "Hey, hey, we're over here." One day I know I saw an elf, although I can't prove it. I've seen some fairies and some other nature beings, the energy and spirit of the trees, which is something I've experienced before, but it's different. Like it's almost like the veil's gotten thinner, I guess is another way to put it. But one of the things that came to me was as I was walking up and down the driveway parallel to this dry riverbed, I got the strong impression to do what you said, which was to acknowledge and recognize and offer that communion and fellowship to these fellow God substances, basically. And and that's funny that you say that. There are no coincidences because this has been happening to me for the last 10 days or so. Almost like, don't forget we're here. You're walking right past us. The other thing that kind of came to, which had come to before, but it's coming stronger now, is that like even on this show and even with people I know and interact with, there's a lot of talk of the galactics and the angelics and all this stuff up there. We're always saying up there, higher frequency and I find it kind of humorous, but the wisdom is in the humor that it's right in front of us. It's right in front of our face. We don't have to, I mean, you can walk outside. I get what you're saying. A bird comes in front of me. That's how it speaks. The wind brushes my cheek. That's how it speaks. It's not an individual aspect. It's the whole symphony.
Yeah.
And again, just I find it a little humorous because I laugh at myself and say, why, I love the stars and all that, but why are you looking up there? Why are you looking for Jesus or, a galactic? We're right here. We're the closest thing to you. We are the mirror. And we're right before your eyes, and so often, right? I mean, so often what we're looking for is right before our eyes, which is very true.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, that Todd, that is it exactly. And there's a term which was coined by biophilists who are people who are studying plant consciousness.
Mm.
And they call it plant blindness, which is intriguing. And what they're saying is that humans, most humans in the world today, are blind to the world of plants. Trees are background. Trees are nice ornamentals in the garden, or they might look nice in a pot plant, but we don't really acknowledge them. I use the analogy. It's a bit like when people leave for work in the morning and they close the front door to go down the pathway to the road to go and get the bus or the train, and the dog may be sitting on the veranda there, and they say good day to the dog and pat it and say see you later. They go down a bit further down the pathway, and the pussy cat comes over and rubs itself around their ankles, say hello cat, how are you? Oh, good. Birds singing in the tree, they may glance up and think that's pretty nice, but they never see the tree.
Yeah.
Okay, they're just background, and yet they are just so much in the foreground. And I think something which has given me an incredible impetus in the last few years in my investigations now into the exciting world of plants and plant consciousness is that in the biosphere of this planet, 99% of all life on the planet is plant life, plant-based. That means then that 1% is where humans and all other life forms, reptilian, mammalian, the whole lot, fit 1% to 99%. And so I think the sooner we sort of think about this and sort of say, wow, this is a plant world we're living in. And we, as humans, like all part of the 1%, we're all living it. We're almost like we're guests. So the more we become aware of this, then of course what comes in here, it opens us up to the proposition that, okay, if plants are there and plants can respond to humans and human thought and human affection, what else is there? And so this opens up the possibilities of the other unseen realms, which are the elementals and the fairy beings, etc. And fairy beings, my gosh, and that's another whole world, as you know, Todd. And I have a little reference book I bought back from England a few years ago, and it lists 123. Oh, I'm just going to have to plug in my computer here. Would you excuse me for a moment?
Yeah, go right ahead.
I just suddenly realized I'm getting a bit low on juice.
It's okay. You go ahead and do what you got to do. No problem. Yeah, this is fascinating what he's talking about. And I kick myself because there's been so many times I've had experiences with nature, with trees, in elementals to some degree, but I haven't cultivated that relationship, or I guess I realized that I could cultivate it more than I have. And the fact that excellent.
I'm back with full power.
I was going to ask you too, because we kind of got off track. But so when I first reawoke, the first thing that happened is I went, oh, what's going on here? And I sat down and did what you were talking about. I kind of meditated and I said, what is it that you want to show me? And for a day and a half, all I saw was trees. They just kept showing me trees and trees. And I thought, well, what am I supposed to do? Be a tree hugger? So I developed this relationship because I've spent the first 2 years of my reawakening homeless on the streets by my own choice. So there was a lot of communion going on, a lot of animal encounters, but the trees were always the basis. And then as my journey continued, and I adopted this lifestyle, which was at that time, for a long time, living out of a suitcase, throwing caution to the wind, broadcasting, and following my guidance. Many times the human aspect in me would get scared, frustrated, and my process was to go to the trees, wherever I was, to sit before them, and to interject my emotions and my appeal and everything I had through the network of the trees. And I got to tell you that it always worked.
Wow.
What, from your perspective and your experience, what are the trees? I mean, that's a colossal potential answer, I know, but to me, I look at them and they're like, they are the elders. I don't know how to explain it. There's some type of bridge, and I don't want to answer the question for you, but from your perspective, what are the trees? What do they represent?
Well,
who are they?
I guess I'll make a little start of the point here, and then we'll get to trees. That you see, we have to realize the world is not a machine. It is not mechanized. It is a living, breathing organism. Everything is interconnected. So much wisdom has been kept in trust to be communicated when the nature of human beings comes full circle once again, to become aware that humans are not the only form of life in the biosphere of planet Earth. So where you live, where we all live, is a world that abounds with many forms of life and intelligence. And so what I'm referring to here, which we'll get into in a bit more depth, are the realms of plant consciousness, the elemental kingdoms, and the fairy kingdoms. So I like, to share with people ways and means of renewing their life by making connections with the world of nature. Your biggest roots are in the world of nature. And of course, when we talk about nature, we do talk about trees, as you were taught, and about the forests. You see, I've been for the last 7 or 8 years doing a lot of research by following various scientists around the world, biophysicists or whatever you like to call them. Um, and there is a new phrase which is being coined by leading scientists. It's neurobiology. Now it's looking at plant consciousness. We moved away from animal and other beings and their consciousness into plant consciousness. This suddenly has opened up a Pandora's box of what is possible. And so, gosh, where do we start? It's big.
No,
Big
that's a big lead in right there. That's beautiful.
I know, and I'll just give you a little tickle here because we may have to come back at another date and
I've got no problem with that.
expand on this. Okay. So, plant consciousness. Plants themselves, as a being, and as you said, the feeling that you get, Todd, with trees are very ancient and it's something. There is wisdom. There is wisdom there, certainly, because a tree. We'll use trees rather than all the little garden plants and the grass. We'll talk about trees. Okay, so from a seedling, they're forever anchored in one place. They can't move around. They can't go anywhere. This is their lot, and this could be the lot of a tree which only lasts 30 years. It could be the lot of a tree which will last 2,000 years, as there are trees and forests around the world that, including Aotearoa, New Zealand, where trees do live for a long, long time. You can imagine the amount of wisdom that these trees have accumulated, heavens above. And a number of people may be aware of the Ringing Cedar series of books, which spoke about the seer Anastasia, who lived in the taiga in Siberia. And she talks about the ringing cedars and the cedar trees and the age of trees. And she puts it in such a great way and how these trees are the wisdom keepers. So we have the tree. Okay. Now, trees have 21 different senses. Humans have 5 senses that we know of, the 5 external senses. Trees have 23. So don't ask me to name them all because I just can't off my head remember them all. But because they have to stay put in one place, they've got to be tree smart, very smart indeed. They have to be so utterly connected and aware of their environment, and of course the other trees that they live with. They all live in a community, and as you were saying, in the behind your house there, the trees, and there may be a number of different species there, but they live as a community.
Yeah.
Because there is a relationship between them. There are some trees, of course, which will strive a bit harder, as humans do, and just don't have much respect for the neighbors and try and grow and put too much shade over the seedlings or something like that. But all in all, there is a great degree of balance and cooperation. Now, the wonderful thing about the forest as such is that every tree in the forest is connected with every other tree. I often used to sort of think, well, years ago that this was possible because tree branches touch, say, above, up in the canopy, but that's not always the case. Often trees, even in the canopy, they just keep that much distance. They don't actually touch or overlap or touch each other, except in a storm. So, how do they connect? Under the ground, under the surface of every area where there is soil and plants growing, there is what we call a mycelium, which is a type of fungus. It's as fine as the hair on your and my head. Okay, you can see it with the naked eye, but with a magnifying glass, you can. And this is such a natural thing. We see the manifestation often in above surface when mushrooms and other toadstools and all these other fungi come up. This is just the flower head of the underground network. And so this underground network joins all the trees together. They correspond with each other. This is what they call the wood wide web. So, which is incredible. Now, so the symbiotic relationship between the tree and the mycelium is the mycelium, of course, it's all over the place. The mycelium feeds off the plant sugars that the tree makes when it does the photosynthesis with the sunlight. and that feeds in. But in return, they will bring messages back to a tree and sort of say, listen, there's some more mineral elements over that way where you may like to send your root because we know you're lacking, or there is more water if you put some roots out that way. So below the surface, there's an awful lot going on. Okay, let's just look at the form, the outside shape and form of a tree. Trees actually have a heartbeat. Within the trees, there is a continual flow. There's the energy, the sunlight energy coming down and bringing in the carbon and taking it down the roots to convert. And then, of course, the tree is putting up moisture, it's putting out oxygen, and it's putting out water and moisture and vapor into the air. So there's a lot going on inside a tree. So it does have a heartbeat. And at night time, when darkness comes, the tree will go into repose. Scientists have measured the heartbeat, which is the flow inside. It slows right down, as do other animals and invertebrates in this world. But also what they've just discovered through time-lapse infrared photography is time of darkness. The branches will go down up to 10 centimeters like that as the tree goes to sleep. This is the sort of thing we would never see because we don't go out at night time and look at trees like that. And if we did, unless we had a measuring stick on it, but by Jove, I'm going to be doing this soon. Not to prove them wrong, but just to see it for myself.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and and then comes the night cycle. The trees are in repose like humans and birds, bird chorus. They have now found that the pre-dawn bird chorus is so important to forests and trees because the resonance and the sound of the birds gives an early indication of the trees time to wake up. The sun's going to be up soon. Slowly come to, get your branches up, stretch your legs, have your morning cup of coffee and get ready for the bright day which is coming. I'm joking. As far as I know, they don't drink coffee.
They might have their own version.
Anyhow, so birds have such an important part to play in this relationship. So trees, heavens above. Some scientists have actually been studying how the trees photosynthesize, how they bring the sunlight in through the leaves or through the bark and etc. And by looking through super microscopes, they found that over the surface, all the outside surfaces of a tree, there are millions upon millions of tiny lenses. And the wonderful thing about this, which has prompted some more scientific research, is that the shape of the lens, the way it is configured, is identical to the shape of the lens in the human eye. So now they're sort of saying, cripes, if the human eye can bring light in and differentiate between light and dark and perhaps shape so they have now taken the research further. And they say that trees can recognize colors. Trees can recognize a shape or a form. This is amazing.
Wow. I want you to continue, but I gotta catch a couple of things that you said because it's connecting. So one thing is you used the new term coming up, neurobiology. Was it
neurobiology? Yeah.
And I think of that and then you started to explain it, and that word just stuck in my third eye, and I thought, what is that? It's almost like they are providing the template or the path, neural network. I see as you were talking, I could see like this network, this neural network, the roots and the branches and such. And then as you were talking more, and you said, and you brought that term up, I was seeing like frequency, like they're showing you the frequency, and are we match or beginning to match that frequency through our own initiatives and acceptance and embracing the possibility and the reality of what it is. I've often walked in my spirit walks as I walk through nature and said, I wonder if when we get to the end of this show, if we're going to find out we were the low species on the totem pole and they've all been waiting for us. But so I really get that. I asked you the question about the trees, and this answer, which you're not done with, is absolutely on point. And I think the other thing that I look at too with what you're saying is that, you know, this whole cohesiveness that you're describing with the birds and the trees and the sun and the elementals is, if you drill down to the tree itself as you're describing, taking the carbon and the sunlight and so on, it's a transformation. It's actually internalizing. It is being creation itself. It's taking all of this alchemic material and it's producing creation. We're, like you said, we're on in a realm that's 99% plant-based. I mean, this, to me, no pun intended, is the root of creation in the physical form.
Yeah.
You know, and then the last thing I'll say, and please continue, as we seem to be coming up to their resonance, their frequency, we are becoming that God, goddess in the flesh. It's like the trees have already done it. The trees are in the physical and have been for thousands, millions of years. Wow. You're just blowing my mind. Please continue. Thank you for letting me interject that.
Oh, no, that's good. No, Todd, thank you for sharing that. That's it's lovely to hear what you just said, because you know, I'm pretty close to all this, and I used to go out and do a lot of talks and things, and of course, with all that's been going on, you know, sort of around the world, I haven't been out doing talks, and I have so much to share, and it's an ongoing sort of project with me. And the thing is that it's what you're saying. It's there's a new paradigm is emerging that recasts how we relate to and understand nature. And I mean, we are the human form. We are creatures of nature. Okay. And when the earth was being formed, or had been formed, and life, at a cellular level, was coming into being, and scientists sort of vary, they're trying to work out which came first, plant life or bacteria. And it's so close. At the moment, I think it's an edge towards plant life. So plants have always been here. It's amazing. Did you know? I'll throw in something interesting here I just read the other day. Scientists have been looking at the human blood cell, okay, and which, of course, has iron in it, okay. It has the molecules of iron in our blood. People who eat a lot of green matter, you know, salads and green vegetables and things like that, actually end up with a lot of chlorophyll cells in their blood, which is interesting because the cell of the chlorophyll and the cell of the iron are identical, like the lens of the eye, identical in structure, so many sides on them. The only thing different is the molecule in the center.
Wow.
And so scientists are now investigating, heavens, is it possible then that if we have enough green matter in our diet, we can just go and sit out in the sun and get all our energy from the sun? Isn't that intriguing? But that's I guess that's something else for the future.
That's intriguing, because if, like, what I had interjected a minute ago about, as you're describing this process, this reality of the tree and the transformational aspect of it, you know, the cyclical transformational rebirth, new birth, whatever you want to call it, consuming that, you know, in the physical, I can see where that same cycle of transformation occurs. And wow, people have talked about, you know, breatharians, and, you know, we used to be, back in the day, we could just live off sunlight and air. Well, that's what our elders are doing.
Yes, that's right.
You know, it's like, and I got to say something else and I've never mentioned this before ever. I've never had a reason to, but ever since I was a little kid, and I would see moss, lichen, you know, something would speak to me. Like, I can't even explain it. Like, you're talking about it and you bring it up, and I'm thinking about all the moss and lichen that I've seen out here behind the house. And there's something about that. I can't explain it. But when you said what came first, the bacteria or the plant, I think of that. Like, because to me, that's almost like a mixture of both.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
interesting.
What? Oh, wow. You know, gosh, and as I was saying before, we've got a lot to learn from plants because plants talk and listen to each other. And because communication is crucial for their survival, nature teaches that collaboration is more important than competition.
Yeah.
And this is where the world today, with human endeavor, has got into competition right around the whole world. We're competing all the time. The whole races of people are. So there's a lot. It's always been there, and shaman have been, aware of this for many years. So also, if we can understand more about the intrinsic intelligence uh, of things in nature, this leads us to a greater appreciation of our spiritual capabilities. And it's an appreciation. I guess that we may be aware of the term spirituality, and some of us have achieved a great connection with the spiritual aspect of our life, or whatever, wherever it is. But it's an appreciation of our spiritual capabilities. As the old saying goes, it goes something like this, and you probably know it better than I am. We're we're in a human form, sort of having a spiritual journey, or whatever the saying goes. And I think that was so true. You know the one I mean, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is the experience that we're having. Um, but the thing is, the big key here is, and just we must remember that we are not in control of nature. Rather, that we must nurture nature.
Yeah.
And this, of course, is something which has gone out of the human ethos at the moment. And I look upon it as like a rape and pillage
Yeah.
of what is going on. And a lot of people say to me, heavens above, what's happening? We're going to ruin the environment of the earth. We're not going to survive. And this may be so. But trees and plants will survive, even though humans won't.
Yeah.
They'll survive in one form or another. And as I say, and this was mentioned to me by a friend many, many years ago, he said, I don't know why people get so upset about what's happening to the planet. Because when she gets sick and tired of humans, she'll just shrug her shoulders. Most of us will fall off, and the few that are left will start all over again. But of course, some of us have an understanding that this has already happened in the past.
Yeah.
Human civilizations have come and gone.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, it's where do we start and finish? And of course, my connections with plants and trees has been optimized by not only living as I do with a forest on our land here and having this communication, and with the elementals and the fairy folk, but little devices that I have bought over the years, which allow me now to connect to houseplants, to connect to trees in the forest, and pick up their little electrical impulses they put out, which is a scientific fact, and convert them into musical notes. So
Exactly
now,
right.
yeah, we're making music from the trees and plants. And this is just another incredible way of connecting with them. It's just and when we hear the music which is produced, it really opens up a lot of other possibilities.
Yeah. Yes, this is fascinating, and that's another thing too. I've noticed as I've reawakened over the last 9 years and walked in nature. So there's been so many memories come back to me of when I was a little boy,
Yeah.
and the most prevalent memory, and it's not a particular time or day. It's a sound. I can remember sitting in my front yard in a tree, a little kid climb a tree, sit on the branch,
Yeah.
and I can remember clearly hearing this sound. And the sound wasn't a singular sound. The sound was an orchestra,
Oh, wow.
It was, and And so over the last 9 years, there'll be times I go, oh, there's that sound, and it's really picked up this year,
Yeah.
especially since we moved here, which was in June. So it's only been
Okay.
4 or 5 months because of this spot behind us. Now, we were in Hawaii last year for
Yeah.
several months. That was a whole other thing, a lot of nature being energy for me and so on. But what I'm getting at is this, like here, I hear it. I hear it here. I'll be sitting in the back talking to my wife, and it'll come in, and it seems to have a certain synchronicity to it as well. Like if I'm thinking about something, and it'll go, yeah, that's it. Stay with that.
Yeah.
And this is part of the reason I asked the question about how do you, when I asked the question earlier, when these things occur, how do you maintain that frequency and not turn and it disappears? And the closest I've gotten, and I don't know if you can help me here, is just fold into the sound. Don't think, just fold into the sound. And I've gotten a little better with it, but I probably can't sustain it for more than maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes for some reason, and I don't know. And maybe it doesn't matter, but it's just an intriguing thing to me. Maybe you've got some insight on that.
No, that's incredible, because I guess it's a bit like one sitting in the forest trying to connect up with the fairy realms, the fairy beings, or even elementals, and being aware of them, and trying to not only hear them, but even see them. It's interesting because back to plants again. If we become attentive to the intelligence and the language of plants, this requires an analogical thinking and an imaginal perceptional capability that all of us can develop. That's a note I wrote a while ago. And this is the thing, thinking and an imaginal perceptional capability that all of us can develop.
There you go.
Now, look, you have to excuse me for a moment. I just have to step out for a call of nature at my age.
Yeah.
So just excuse me, everybody. I shall be.
Yeah. Oh, that was a good one what he just said. So what did he say? Imaginal thinking. And that's one thing that I've recognized in myself, and maybe y'all can relate to it. It's where like you are in nature and that bird flies in front of you, or the wind hits you a certain way, or you think you hear something, or you hear that sound. And so many times I can remember, am I in my imagination? Is this my imagination running wild, or whatever the case is? And I think that maybe that's another thing that's becoming more self-evident, more a part of us, an accepted part of us that maybe we forgot, is that the imagination is some kind of elixir, alchemic accelerator or connector or something, that it's not, our imagination's not running away. Maybe our imagination is our intuition, more conscious intuition as we create from our imagination. I don't know. This man's incredible. I love this brother.
Hey, yeah, back again.
We're all good.
Okay. You're all
Somebody
there.
asked, somebody asked a question. Somebody asked a question.
And if we
Go
do
ahead.
get into this developing our imaginal perceptional capability, it becomes as natural as breathing, as natural as the beating of our hearts. This is a profound effect that plant intelligence can have on your life. You see, I look at recognizing plant intelligence and coming closer to the natural things around you. It opens other doorways. And other gateways open. It's just like sometimes going through a portal. And as you know too, sometimes when we do walk, as you do amongst the trees there, and you will be aware of the moss and the lichen, and I think it's quite interesting you spoke, Todd, about the moss and the lichen, because I've tried to record moss. I haven't recorded lichen. Moss is a very difficult thing to record, because moss, as you can imagine, is just a great number of separate little plants which grow very closely together, which is intriguing. They're interconnected, and they're very, very close. But there's just there's a babble of intelligence there, in the moss. And I think one would hear it if one opened one's perception to this, it would chat to you. And you know yourself that moss is always such an inviting thing. It is so pleasing to the eye when we see green moss on the ground. And then, of course, the first thing we want to do is go and lay on it because it just looks so beautiful and soft, you know. So so
it's not it's not. Oh, somebody asked a question. I just don't want to disregard them because it's about your work. And I think you may have answered this earlier, but let's just make sure. So anyone that's come in, thank you, Charmaine. Did Gary produce a documentary in the last year or two on how trees communicate in many ways, like roots? I think we had mentioned this earlier, but that's the one that's on Gaia. Is that the one on Gaia?
No. The one on Gaia is Voices from the Forest.
Okay.
Which was when we went into the forest in Aotearoa, New Zealand, to try and capture images of the fairy folks.
Okay, I got you.
And so that's what that was. I guess that I have made a few short films which I put up on Facebook or put on YouTube, which shows work I do around home here, around the forest here, and how I am connecting. Oh my gosh, look, Todd, it's just one thing leads to another. I remember a couple of years ago, I had a wonderful Māori kaumātua, a Māori elder, came to visit. And he knew I was creating music with plants, and he said, I've come to hear what it's all about. So just by the back door here, we have what we call a kawa plant, a little plant which can sometimes grow quite big. And Māori know this in New Zealand, and so do a lot of other people, as being a very medicinal plant, very wonderful for various complaints of humans and animals. So I recorded the plant, and he just was overcome by the fact that this plant was singing, and it sings its own unique song. All plants have a unique song. Now, then he came back a few days later on his way, swinging back home to chat to me further, and he said, listen, he said, this is wonderful that you're doing. He said, what I would like you to see you do sometime is record water. I thought, oh yeah. And I put that into my too hard basket, recording water. Sure, I can go with a microphone and record the little water trickling over the rocks and in the pools and little rapids, which makes beautiful relaxing. So I suddenly found I had a device which I bought in from overseas, which allowed me to put the contacts underwater, not to connect with stones or anything on the bed of the river, but just to dangle in the water like little sensitive mics, but they weren't microphones. They were picking up something else. Lo and behold, I produced the most amazing song from running spring water at home here. We have a beautiful freshwater spring. And then I took that to another step. I thought, if this is possible to hear water, what about stone? So we have a particular stone I mentioned earlier on in our chat here, and it was the sacred stone in New Zealand, the peace stone, which is the green stone, the pouanamu. And I am a great follower of things to do with pouanamu. I have so much of it around here. And so I sat down one day and I put my little devices, the contacts, on a beautiful pouanamu boulder, little stone I had, put it there. And I tried 2 or 3, and then the third one I tried, it produced music. I was just bowled over. And I thought, how is this possible? And then I have experimented with myself. I plugged myself into the device, and also it can interpret my little signals and put them into music. So I thought, gosh, what's going on here? So the conclusion I came to, the common element with all I do with music of the plants and connecting to plants, plants, okay, they're living beings or living entities. Rock is not, doesn't seem to be. Water is incredibly energetic. So the link between plants and stone and humans is the water that flows within it. Stone, you say? Well, all stone, including cement that we make, which we always hope is going to dry out and be substantial, always retains water. So does every stone you pick up, you cut through it, put it through under a electron microscope. It's had little fibrils in there, and there's always moisture in the middle of the denser stone. So there is water, molecules of water there. There's water within the plant. There's water within the human. So I'm investigating the fact that we are all resonating naturally with each other. Okay, we resonate with the plants, we resonate with the water, and we resonate with the trees because we've got the water inside us.
Yeah.
So that's something else. And as you know, the factor of water is so important, and the energy, which Masato, of course, did many years ago in Japan, showing us the patterns in water. So it's and water has memory, heavens above. Every drop of water that we drink, there's memory in every drop of water, no matter what it's been put through chemically or treated if we're on town supply.
Agreed.
It's got memory.
Yeah.
And the water that passes through us and passes through nature is taking more memory. So there's all sorts of things going on with these connections, and I find it quite exciting. And this also leads me to believe that the fairy folk, the elusive fairy folk, who are sometimes seen, often heard, they live in the same biosphere as we do as humans. Slightly different vibration. They are there all the time. They're all around us, as Nikki Hammond keeps telling me all the time. They're always there, everywhere. And sometimes we'll see them. Sometimes if something shifts and a little gate opens, and there they are.
Mm.
And they must feel the same about us. Suddenly something will shift for them and say, oh my gosh, is that a human being? Gosh,
That's
aren't they?
That's funny.
Aren't they funny?
That's funny you said that, because I have had experiences with fairies, water nymphs. There was a lot of moss, by the way, when that happened. But I've never seen. I've felt the presence and think I saw, which I must have, the elders, Bigfoot. But I've never, and nature beings. I've seen that energy. But 3 or 4 months ago, when we first got here, we were pulling out of the car, out of the driveway, and I was about to get into the car, and I looked over into the forest. And it's funny you say that, because that's what I saw. I saw a little an elfin, and going into a door. And that you said that about the door, that was strange. Uh-oh, did we lose you? Oh, we lost him. He's frozen. God, what an incredible soul this gentleman is, this brother. I think he's the one that's frozen, or is it me? Can somebody tell me? Let me check. Yeah, his signal's frozen. Let's see. Is there anyone tell me if we're live? Am I frozen, or is he frozen? Let's see. Let me check. Oh, he's frozen. Okay, he froze. Maybe he'll come back. Yeah. What a fascinating dude. What a fascinating time, people. And isn't this type of conversation and interaction much more powerful and expansive and meaningful and real than the bullshit, the election, the who's right, who's wrong? All that stuff is, I think as time goes on, going to become less relevant. I will reach out to Gary, and I will see if he'll come back on in December. And I think he'd be a great interview, a great show to have in December, because I think December is going to be, as every month has been, a very, very powerful month. And I will send him a note and just let him know that we appreciate him coming in today. He may have just had his signal go down. But all right. Thank you, everybody, for coming in. Please spread the word. We're being suppressed. That's not a complaint, but I'd love to see this energy of, like Gary and our other guests, have an expanded awareness in the community. So if you can share us out, to one page or one group when these shows come on, because we're not getting the notifications, just aren't going out. We are going to have our own site. It's already constructed. Thank you, Marina Govier. We're looking at doing this probably in about a week when we roll it out. From that point on, each and every show will be originating from that website. So no matter what happens as far as deplatforming potentials or suppression or anything, we will always be found. And the goal is to have a 24-hour channel with lives and replays from the get-go. And that's what I'm planning on doing with the help of some other people. So anyway, thank you, Gary Cook. Gary Cook and Nikki would be cool on together. That's a great idea, Morgan Lee. Thank you, Angela. Anyway, I want to thank Gary Cook. I want to thank you all for your love and support and contributions that allow us to keep doing this by the seat of our pants every day. And that's not a complaint. That's just the way the 5D energy works. We have to have faith in the moment, moment by moment. And so we'll be back in 2 hours and 50 minutes with a homegirl that I've never met before named Monica Ramirez from South Texas, where I'm from originally. And this is and we may just pop on at some point in between then and now as well. Peace out. Thank you, Gary. See you again.